It Takes Balls is brought to you by our new sponsor, D's Nuts. Yes, you heard that right. If you've never heard of them, check them out at grabdsnuts.com. But warning, these are not your grandparents' peanuts. D's Nuts is really shaking up the nut game. They're gourmet, fun, and packed with flavor. Whether you're a fan of savory flavors like ranch, sriracha, or hot cheddar, spicy like ghost pepper, or if you have a sweet tooth like me, you'll like the banana pudding. D's Nuts has something for everyone. But D's Nuts aren't just about taste, they're about making a difference. For every bag, can, or piece of D's Nuts merch purchased using the coupon code NUTCHECK on grabdsnuts.com, you can save 10%, and another 10% gets donated towards supporting Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. So the next time you're craving a snack that's both delicious and meaningful, reach for D's Nuts. Because when it comes to supporting Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation, it takes balls and it takes D's Nuts. Available at grabdsnuts.com, Amazon, and Walmart locations nationwide. D's Nuts, a delicious, healthy snack in a variety of fun flavors and making a difference one nut at a time. The stories shared on It Takes Balls are unique to the individual sharing. Always speak with your trusted medical provider for treatment options specific to you. Welcome back to It Takes Balls, presented by Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. Today I'm joined by a vice president of an aviation company. Mike Sanders is a testicular cancer survivor as well. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I mentioned you're a testicular cancer survivor. We'll get into that. But before we do, tell me a little bit about who you are and your background.
So my name is Mike Sanders. I grew up in Southern California, the LA area. Like you mentioned, I'm vice president of our family business. We make hydraulic fluid fittings for aerospace. And so I worked here all through high school, went to the Navy for 6.5 years, and got out of the Navy and came back to work for the family business.
Awesome.
I also met my wife while I was stationed out in Greece. So been married for 4.5 years now.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I know in your submission you mentioned, like you were in the Navy when you first felt something going on. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was stationed out in Greece, which is considered a dependent restricted base because the medical facilities there, they don't have enough to support families and kids and stuff like that. So it's a pretty limited health clinic, which kind of played into them being able to properly diagnose me. So the first time I went in 4 times over my course of 2.5 years in Greece. The first time I went in there, I had swollen lymph nodes. They pretty much just gave me the military treatment. Here's an ice pack, here's ibuprofen, go home, let us know if it gets worse. So swollen lymph nodes on both sides. They went away in like a couple days and I didn't think much of it. And then I went in about a year later and I felt a lump. And like I always heard, if you feel a lump, go to the doctor. Don't try to figure it out yourself. So that's what I did. Doctor did an exam, said, oh, it's epididymitis. So that's usually caused from some kind of STI. Here's antibiotics. How old are you? Oh, you're 25. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Go home. Never tested me for anything. Just said epididymitis, gave me antibiotics. And then the pain and swelling went away. But the lump was always kind of there. But since he told me that that's what it was, I just figured that was a new normal, I guess. And then it got really bad. About another year later, it kind of flared up again. And I was like, okay, something's not right. Went back in, same thing. They said, usually caused by STI, here's antibiotics. And I said, I had met my wife in this time. So I was like, there's no way, unless we're giving something back and forth to each other, then I don't think so, but I trust you guys. So then I have to go tell my fiance that that's going on. That's kind of an awkward conversation. So luckily she trusted me enough. It didn't ruin things too bad. And then they said, STI, here you go. Again, antibiotics, sent me home. And at that time I was out processing of the Navy, ready to come home. So they never got me a scan there. And then they flew me to Virginia to out process me out of the Navy. I got an exam by a doctor there again. They saw on my report, okay, nothing's going on. Or you have epididymitis. We gave you antibiotics. Okay, see ya. And then that was it. So got out of the Navy. Again, pain and swelling went down. Didn't think too much of it. Thought it was kind of weird, but just kept moving on. And then in November, I left I left Greece in July. Now in November, back home in California, it was really bad. I couldn't stand without pain. Swelling was huge. It was like I felt like my ball was the size of a softball. It was crazy. So I went to the doctor again, and again the same thing. They said, "How old are you?" Okay, it's probably an STI, but at least they got me an ultrasound. So I went in for an ultrasound, and I didn't have the greatest feeling about it because after I kind of looked at the ultrasound tech and was like, "So is there anything wrong?" She's like, "I can't discuss that. Doctor has to do that." So it kind of clued me in. I was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound good." I ended up going back in December to find out the results of that. And in that time period, my wife and I had gotten married. So that was nice. She was my 90-day fiance. So she came in on a fiance visa. We had 90 days. So we said, let's do it. Let's go to Vegas. So went to Vegas, got married. And this is all while I'm waiting for the ultrasound results. So we get back from Vegas. That next week, doctor calls me in and says, "You pretty sure you have testicular cancer. You have your left testicle is completely engulfed by a tumor." And I said, "Okay, what's the next step?" He's like, "We're going to have to take it out." I said, "Okay." He said, "We're doing it tonight." So he was the surgeon on duty that night. He booked himself a surgery. I went home. I played taps to my left testicle. It's military tradition at night. Just as a joke with my wife, trying to lighten the mood. I didn't really know what to think. I didn't know how serious it was. Went in for surgery and then went in for surgery that night. And that's when they pulled it out.
So let's go back to Greece. Did you say these are American doctors in Greece, or were these Greek doctors?
No. So it's a clinic on base. So they're all Navy providers. Okay. They're in the Navy themselves. No civilian doctors there. So it's some of them are officers, some of them are enlisted. What they call it is a independent duty corpsman, which is one of the ones who saw me, and then a couple officers saw me as well.
Yeah. And I mean, telling these stories, I think is great too for providers to listen to, because like, you were misdiagnosed how many times, and like, you know, they got to stop dismissing these kinds of things.
Right. And I think what played into the problem there is that if they wouldn't have had the ultrasound capability there on that base. So instead of going through what we know to be the proper procedure, let's get some kind of imaging done. You know, let's not trust our gut and say it's epididymitis. Okay, you're 25, and kick you to the wind. They would have had to send me out to a Greek doctor to get that done. And that's probably a lot of paperwork, a lot of hassle for them to get done. So that never happened.
Yeah. Where in Virginia did you come?
So because, like I said, Greece is a really small base. They can't out process me there. So then I went back to Norfolk, Virginia, where all the Navy's at, big Navy's at. Yeah.
That's where I am.
Yeah. So, you probably see Navy people all the time. There's so much Navy there. So that's where I out processed and pretty much just go through all the paperwork, have another physical exam to say, hey, you're good to go. We're not leaving you broken. And they kind of did. So they left me hanging on that one.
Did you listen to the recent episode with JJ Resendez? He was in Bahrain, I think, and came back to Virginia. So you guys have similar stories with that.
Yeah, pretty much anyone that's out at a kind of one of those odd bases, they bring you all back to Virginia and then get you out from there.
Interesting. All right. So what were the next steps? You had your orchiectomy that night. I mean, with your was she your wife at that point, or still your fiance at the orchiectomy?
No, she was my wife for about a week and a half.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, what was that like for you guys having that whirlwind?
That was pretty crazy. So like I said, she's my 90-day fiance. So she's from Italy. So her mom was here for our wedding also. So we had a guest in the house, and now all of a sudden I'm going into surgery. So that was kind of a bummer, a shock. And that surgery was, it was fun when I woke up for about an hour or two. And then I know that my mom, my wife, and her mom were all kind of waiting around the phone. I was sleeping, relaxing, and they kept waiting around the phone. And then they kept calling me. The doctor called me to let me know what was going on, and they were waiting and waiting. Then finally the doctor called my mom and was like, you got to wake him up. I got to tell him these results. So woke up, listened to the message from the doctor, and pretty much told me that, yep, it's confirmed, it's cancer. I'm going to refer you to all the oncologist, and you'll move forward from there. So, I mean, I think for me, I kind of just looked at it like, okay, this is, I mean, in the military, just like, okay, what's the problem of the day? How are we going to get through it? For my family and them, I think they were a lot more scared than I was. They hear cancer and kind of lost it, you know. They were pretty upset, but I was just trying to keep a smile on for them and stay strong.
Yeah. I mean, was your wife and your mother-in-law like thinking, what did I get into?
Yeah. My wife's my ride or die. So she was okay. She was more worried than anything, you know, just wanted to make sure that I was going to be okay. And same with her mom. Her mom had to leave like a couple days after my surgery while I was still in bed, pretty much not moving. So that was a little tough, but I think they were kind of just scared, you know, not knowing what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Talk to me about the next step. So you woke up and you got the message. Then what was the thought process for like chemo and, you know, everything after that?
So they referred me to the oncologist, and I mean, initially waking up, I was in a lot of pain. I felt bad. I couldn't walk to the toilet, couldn't do anything for a couple days. That was kind of rough too. They only gave me ibuprofen for that. So I'm like, well, I'm used to this treatment. I thought maybe they would have given me something a little stronger, but I ended up getting through it, and then went to the oncologist, and he said, okay, we're doing chemo. And I think that's kind of, for me, when it started to get a little bit more real, like, oh crap, this is cancer. I'm actually going to do chemo. So they told me you're going to do 3 rounds of BEP, explained all that to me, you know, put me through they give me like a little class on, okay, this is what chemo is like. Here's things you need to avoid. And I was like, well, I just went from eating everything to now I can't eat anything, it seems like. So that was kind of a tough transition.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned that you had a reaction to bleomycin.
Yeah. So through my course of chemo, I had a couple complications. First, when I went in for a CT scan after my orchiectomy to see if it had spread, and they found that it had spread to 2 lymph nodes. So I got labeled as or diagnosed with stage 2B. So it was on a lymph node. It was larger than 2 centimeters. And so my first CT scan, I go in, everything's normal. They said some people have allergic reaction to the dye. I had never had it before. And said it'll feel a little warm at first. So they pushed it in, went through the CT scan, and I was like, man, I feel really warm. You said I'm supposed to feel warm, right? And then it just felt like someone put a blanket that was on fire over me, and it just started itching like crazy. I started scratching the back of my head, and the nurse comes in and is like, are you okay? And I was like, I think so. Is it supposed to be like this? And she's like, I think you're having an allergic reaction. So they pretty much grabbed me, ran me straight into urgent care. They hit me with the adrenaline and started pumping me with fluids to make sure I was going to be okay. And so that was kind of rough. And so now I learned I'm allergic to the iodine, and they're like, okay, well, you're going to have to keep getting scans. So I think I did 3 scans while I was going through chemo, and then a couple follow-ups later. And so each time that happened, I had to pretty much pre-med with Benadryl, prednisone. So I would get all Benadryl out and then have to go get a scan. And
so they still give you the iodine, but they just kind of counteract it ahead of time. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So they're like, we have to give you the iodine, but here's how we're going to combat it pretty much. So it's like a fight every time I go in there. It's like, okay, great. And that was the same thing for the bleomycin. The first time they gave me the bleomycin, I started breaking out in kind of a rash. And this was all really new to me because I had never been allergic to anything. So it sucked on top of that. And so every time I went in for an appointment with bleomycin, pretty much did the same thing. They would give me IV Benadryl and would just completely, I would almost watch them put it in, and within a minute or two, I was like nodding off because it would get me so drowsy. So that was tough because it just threw off sleep cycles. It threw off everything. I would go home from those appointments, sleep all day, and then I'd be wide awake at 11 o'clock in the morning, at 11 o'clock at night, stay up all night long, and then be like, well, great.
So what was your oncologist's decision to continue the bleo with the reaction and not do EP times 4? Was that an option for you?
I don't think they ever mentioned it. They just said that I think because it was only going to be the 3 rounds, that we'll just keep doing it that way. And it wasn't bad enough. My allergic reaction wasn't bad enough that it was like closing my throat or anything like that. It was just a skin rash. And so I think they just decided to move forward. And with the Benadryl, it helped it a lot. It didn't break out every time. It was just that first time without Benadryl that it really got bad.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know you had a blood clot from your PICC line. So kind of explain what a PICC line is and that whole process, and then talk about the blood clot.
Okay. So a PICC line, pretty much a long IV tube that they put into your arm about right here. And it's a line that goes all the way through a major vein and drops into your heart. So that way, when they issue the chemo, it's not going through your veins, because the chemo is pretty much killing everything. So they want to get it directly in your bloodstream and try to minimize the damage on that. So with my PICC line, you have to be every appointment, they clean it, they cover it. You can't get it wet. That's like a serious point of risk for infection, because it's pretty much just an open wound with a big hole right there. And one of the concerns with the PICC line is that you can get blood clots, or you can pinch on it, you can pull it out. And if there's little measurements all along it. So if it starts coming out too much, then they have to redo it, pull it out completely, clean it all, and redo it. So that's pretty rough. I was on my last round of chemo, when throughout my chemo, it started coming out a little bit more, but it was still within the parameters to be able to leave it in. So it was like my last round of chemo. I wake up one morning and I'm like, my arm feels really weird. And I looked down at my arm and it looked like Hellboy. My whole arm was just completely swollen, like purple red. I was like, that's not good. So went into the doctor and they told me that I had formed a blood clot. So luckily, like I said, I was at the end of the last round. So I had one more treatment, and it wasn't the bleomycin, which is the one that they're really concerned about. So they pulled that out. They pulled the PICC line out and did my last chemo IV. And so the blood clot was pretty tough, because then they put me on blood thinners, and it was like a little self-injectable. And because of the chemo, I was just bruising so easily. So I started on my legs, and my legs were just like covered in bruises on both sides from that blood thinner. And then I'd have to wake up. I think it was every morning and every night I had to give myself an injection. So that one was a little defeating, but pushed through it.
Yeah, I definitely don't envy you there. With the PICC line going into your tattoos, for those listening, you can't see that he's got tattoos, but on YouTube you can see he's got tattoos. Did that affect, how does that work?
I still have I don't know if you can see it, just a small little dot where it went in.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it just left a little round scar. So nothing too bad, which was nice.
Yeah. All right. So, other than those notable things with the reactions and the PICC line, did you have compounding effects of chemo, and you got nice blonde hair, losing your hair?
Yeah. So it's only fake blonde. I just figured that it's fake blonde and a mullet. So now that I can grow my hair, I'm not in the military, so I always had to cut it and keep it nice and clean. And now I have hair, so I like to celebrate it, go a little crazy with it. But yeah, I lost all my hair at the beginning of the second round of chemo. So I kind of knew it was coming. I left my hair long as I could. And one night I was sitting on the couch and I was kind of just running my fingers through my hair. And I looked at my hand and all my hair was stuck in between my fingers. And I was like, oh, here we go. So I went to the barber the next day and he shaved it all off for me. And then I was rocking the bald look all the way through the end of chemo.
Yeah. So yeah, with the effects of it, did you because you had the bleo, and that's toxic to your lungs potentially. And we'll get into like what you've done since, which is very impressive after having bleo. But I mean, what were like the physical effects on you?
I mean, I was lucky enough to not have to work. So I stayed home. I wasn't having to get up and go out and about. My wife was awesome. She took me to all my appointments, took care of me. So I didn't have anything other crazy like side effects. I was just exhausted all the time, constantly tired. I remember one night specifically, I was just trying to eat dinner and I couldn't. I just started tearing up and I was like, I can't even. I know I need to eat. I'm not hungry. This food sounds terrible, tastes terrible. So that just kind of sucked. One thing I do remember from chemo was I think it was the bleo or when they flush my PICC line, because every appointment they have to put in a flush and they clean out the PICC line of anything there, and then they'll run the chemo through. But I just remember the taste every time they would do that. I would instantly taste like like chewing on pennies. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. And another thing too was smells. Like my sense of smell got so sensitive, and some things would just be like putrid to me. If my mom sprayed cologne in the house or perfume in the house, I would be able to like smell it a minute after she sprayed it way across the house in her bathroom on the other side. I was like, did you spray perfume? I would just instantly smell it.
Yeah, I had something similar, not with perfume, but like whatever they would use to clean my port. I got a detergent that smelled like that afterwards, and it just made me want to gag every time. It's like,
yeah, it's so bad.
So when chemo ended, what were the next steps for you? I know you had an RPLND that had some pretty scary things happen as well with that.
Yeah, so my chemo ended, I believe it was like March of 2020. So, or maybe a little earlier, February of 2020.
So you just got ahead of it with the chemo.
Yeah. Yeah. So the chemo was done, starting to get a little bit better. And throughout the course of the chemo, they were monitoring the two tumors that I had on my lymph nodes. And the hope was that both of them would get small enough that it wasn't going to be a big deal, and that they could just continue to monitor them, or they would go away completely. So one of them got smaller and the other one got bigger. So because of that, they told me that I had to do the RPLND surgery. And so pretty much they cut me open. Then they had to do it old school because there was not, I forget what it's called, but where they use the robot arms and you just get 3 little scars. Mm-hmm. They gave it to me the old school way because that was booked for like 2 years, they said. So they cut me from my chest all the way down past my belly button, and they ended up removing 22 lymph nodes. Wow. And that was super tough because that was in April. So COVID had just hit, and this is when it was real scary. You know, no one's on the streets, no one's out anywhere. And they're telling me now I have to go get a surgery in the middle of this. So I remember my family dropped me off that night or that early morning, and they weren't allowed in the hospital at all. So I couldn't have anyone there when I woke up. And then I ended up spending a little over 7 days in there.
All alone.
Yeah. It was weird.
I mean, what was that like for you and your wife to be separate for 7 days with this going on?
I mean, it sucked. Again, they were just more scared for me than anything. I kind of just took it with a grain of salt, and like, all right, this is what it is today. This is what I got to do. It's what I got to get done. So I think it was harder on them than it was for me, besides the complications. But yeah, they were just real worried, and then not being able to see me, or, usually you can go in after surgery and at least see me sleep and see that I'm alive still. They got a phone call saying he's okay or he's out of surgery. And then, so I'll get into the little bit. During my surgery, they ended up nicking an artery. So they had to call the arterial team to come in, which is like one of the major risks they take with this surgery. And they ended up doing it. So the arterial team came in, patched me up, and I was so out of it when I woke up. I was on a bunch of Dilaudid. They gave me a little button to press every time it hurt. And so for the next, I think it was like 3 days, I had a fever. My fever was going through the roof. I was having like hallucinations, not knowing if I was sleeping, not knowing if I was awake, kind of all over the place. And the worst part was that the doctors would not get all on the same page of what tests needed to be done. So it would be 3 o'clock in the morning. A doctor said, "Hey, I need this lab ran." They'd come draw my blood. And at this point, from the chemo, my veins were just completely flat. I used to have really good veins, never any problems with them drawing blood. And now they can't. I had IVs in my hands, IVs in my arms. They were just trying to draw blood from anywhere they could. So they would come in 6-7 times a day, bruise an area, then have to move up, bruise that area. So I was running out of space. Finally, I was like, do all the blood drawing at one time. So yeah, that was pretty rough.
Yeah. And you had a transfusion, it says?
Yeah. So my fever was all over the place. They couldn't get my vitals to stabilize. They couldn't figure out what it was. So they finally made the decision, I think on like after 3 days of this, to give me a blood transfusion. And they gave me a blood transfusion. And the next day I woke up and it was like I had just taken all the vitamins in the world. I felt great. I wasn't hitting that button anymore. I think they keep track of how many times you hit that painkiller button. And I think I had gone from like, it only activates every 10 minutes. So I was timing like every 10 minutes, I was in so much pain. And I went from hitting it like 200 or 300 something times in a day to 0. Wow. And they're like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I don't want any more of that. That is terrible.
What's your blood type?
I think I'm O negative.
All right. Okay. So let's talk about the recovery from that during COVID. Were you able to get out and walk with nobody around you, or did you pretty much stay in bed or what?
Once I got home, once I could start walking around, then I was out moving, taking the dog for a walk, things like that. It was pretty scary because I had just been told I pretty much was already quarantining through my chemo. So then I'm like, yes, finally I'll be done with this. I can go sit at a restaurant. I can not have to worry about people being out and about, worried about getting infected with anything. And then the whole world shuts down. I was like, dang it. I just want to go somewhere. So that was pretty rough, but yeah, I mean, it was a weird time for everybody. So I guess it just compounded the weirdness after recovering from all of that.
Yeah. Let's talk about survivorship now, because obviously having been in the Navy, and I can tell by your shoulders, you're pretty fit. But I mean, what was it like getting back to your peak form?
So right when I could start moving again, I had one of my friends who was a personal trainer start coming over to the house, training my wife and I together. And I just wanted to get back after it. I absolutely hated being in bed, not working, not doing anything, felt useless. So I wanted to get back after it as quick as I could. Yeah.
And you do a lot of running, which you did a challenge for TCAF. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So the beginning of last year, my friend and I decided to do, we did like a sober February. So no drinking, and a 500 calorie workout every day. So doing that, I found that the quickest way to get the 500 calories in is a run. So I've always liked running. I've done a marathon before. But so I started getting into running. I started listening to too much David Goggins and got that ultra marathon bug. Started hearing about these 100-mile races, listened to both of his books, and was like, I have to do this. So I really started getting after it. Started doing some trail runs. And then in April of last year, I went up to Auburn to watch one of my buddies from the Navy run 100K. And before I signed, I ran the 25K, which is only about 15 miles. And that day I signed up for 100 miles for this year. So this this last April, a day after my birthday, I decided that was going to be my birthday present to myself to go run this 100 mile race. So with the excitement of wanting to do it for myself, I thought that it would be pretty important to find some other way to spread testicular cancer awareness. And so I wanted to dedicate this run to TCAF. So I had some shirts made, said "Grab life by the balls" across the front, and I sold those shirts up to my race. And I made $800 for you guys there. And then I was also able to raise some money on GoFundMe. So that was pretty cool.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah. I mean, if it made it feel a little bit more special, I mean, I of course I did it for myself, mainly just to prove that I can still do things. I don't want to feel like a victim and feel like this completely took me out. So I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something harder than I had done prior to cancer.
Yeah, you said the 25K was only 15 miles. Like, I mean, the 100K is like, yeah, I mean, 100 miles. Wow. I mean, I don't even like driving 100 miles.
Yeah. It was all last year, pretty much. I had built a training plan to kind of keep up with my running. And my first ultra marathon was last June up in Big Bear Mountains. And that was painful. The first one, I didn't know much about fueling or hydration or anything like that. I kind of just said, all right, let's go try it out. So that one was 33 miles. I did a couple more 50Ks. And then last December, I did a 50 miler. And that was the most I had run prior to the 100 miles. So I knew I could get halfway there.
Mm-hmm. So did this, was there any mental impact of the cancer on you, or did this help with that? Or,
I mean, I think it just made me realize that I can, I mean, your mind is pretty much the only thing. It's way stronger than you think it is. If you can kind of just get past that mental break and really push yourself, then you can do anything. So I think that's what I learned the most, is that it was scary, but I took it one day at a time and kind of faced the problem of the day and got past that and didn't think about the long term too much and just moved one step at a time.
That's great advice, to face it like the problem of the day. That's the first I've heard of it put that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. You got to break. I mean, just like the 100 miles, I couldn't think about it in 100 miles. I would have never finished. I thought about it, and every time I got to see my family, because there was I got to see them five spots through the course of the race, and then at the finish. So I just kept telling myself, right, just make it to the next time you get to see them. Just make it to the next time you get to see them. Breaking it down in a more manageable chunks.
Now, are you running the whole time, or are you doing some walking breaks?
It's a lot of walking.
Okay.
I mean, we call it ultra marathon running, but it's a lot of walking, a lot of eating. I mean, it's a good time, but it's unless you're one of the elite of the elite, you're doing a lot of walking up hills. Yeah. But yeah, it's a good time. Just 31 hours and 49 minutes out there.
Wow. So no sleep? You just went straight through an entire day?
Yeah, no sleep. If you do races, it sounds crazy, but there's races longer than 100 miles. There's some 250s, and I think there's going to be the first 350 next year, which is absolutely insane to me. 100 was enough for me for now. Maybe we'll see in another year or so if I have the same thoughts, but yeah, no sleep. You just kind of run through the night and keep moving.
Jeez. Have you had any other lasting effects from your treatment, as like neuropathy or retrograde ejaculation or anything like that?
Yeah. So the only thing, I am trying to have a kid now. So the goalie's pulled. We're just hoping now to see if we can have a kid naturally. But I did a test after, I think like a year after chemo. And they said I was like right at the limit to still be able to have a kid naturally or not. So we'll see. I'm hoping we can.
Yeah. Best of luck. We're going through a similar thing. It took us like 11 months and then we had a successful, and then it was unfortunately miscarried. So I guess we didn't quite get to the year that I guess qualifies as infertile, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, sorry to hear that, and good luck.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe we'll make future best friends or something.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I'm hoping.
So what other advice do you have for anybody who's like just starting down this road, and somebody in their family has found this podcast, or they've found this podcast and they've shared it with the patient?
I mean, first, before even becoming a patient, I think it's important to say, like, grab your balls, just do it, test it, feel yourself, know what's normal and what's not. Because unfortunately for me, I felt something not normal and went to the doctor, but some people don't ever feel themselves or don't ever examine themselves, and they don't even find it. So I think that's the most important thing, first of all. And second of all, I mean, kind of going back to it, like, you just have to take it, what's the problem of the day, and get over that. But it's not easy. It's definitely a struggle every day, but there's hope. You can run 100 miles a couple of years later. You can do whatever you want pretty much. So just keep pushing through.
Awesome advice. And you're in California. Will we see you at our conference in September?
Yes, I'm already signed up. I will be there.
Perfect.
So,
and I'm hosting a golf outing in Norfolk next year. So hopefully you can make it out to that too. That's quite a bit of a way to travel for just a golf outing, but
hey, we'll make it happen.
You're familiar with Norfolk.
Anything for some golf.
Yeah.
Any excuse to get out of the office, I'll go golfing.
Perfect. I'll mark you down as a player.
Awesome.
Where can people find you if they want to connect and learn more about you?
I think biggest outlet would be Instagram. It's Michael Justin 25. And then also on Facebook, Michael Sanders. Awesome. So yeah, if you want to check out what my next runs are going to be, or want some running advice yourself, I'm not an expert, but I can tell you what I've gone through.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for being on It Takes Balls. Thank you for your service. Thank you for raising money. Thank you for everything.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun.
For more information and resources for your testicular cancer journey, visit testicularcancerawarenessfoundation.org. You can also follow us on social media at Testis Cancer. We're on Facebook at Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation.